it's such a blur. And like most people's first feature films, it's not great. Like intellectually, if I look back at this movie, it isn't as good as it maybe could be or should be. But there's things about it that really I definitely learned and took from it. The movie's called Littlefield, and it is based on a script about my most sort of intense and passionate high school relationship. But I wanted to really get into what it was like to be this guy who grew up watching romantic comedies and thought that's the way you behaved, realizing that relationships sometimes just don't work. The movie was shot in DV. It was shot almost without a plan. I mean, we were still coming up with the plan days before. I'll never forget 3 days before shooting, because again, we had no money. We had less than no money. We didn't even have a corporate structure that would allow us to use like a company credit card. Like it was, nobody got paid anything. It was McDonald's and homemade sandwiches for lunch. It was my own credit card debt to get this thing made. We bought an old DVX 100. She didn't look like much, but she got it where it counts, kid. You know, it was, I think, a script that was good.
Oh my God. 4 times in one night? God, you are so much better than Mike. And look at that thing. It's huge. Jeez, you are just better than Mike at everything. Making money, sex, sports, sex, raising children, sex, sex, sex. I bet you're even a bigger Superman fan than Mike. God, you're just better than Mike at everything.
And it was a script that I felt probably more than any other script that I did, to the point that that we would come back to it later on, you know, almost a decade later. But we still didn't really know what we were doing. We still had a lot of learning on the fly. And I'll never forget the cast and crew living in me and Jessica's apartment with our 2 German Shepherds. And I don't know how Jessica stayed married to me, I'll be honest. I'll never forget picking up one of our young actors, dropped by McDonald's, and I remember the wake-up call for Sean McHugh was an Egg McMuffin to the head, because I was just over it, right? Like I just chunked it at him. But the thing is that we were all young and we didn't know what we were doing, but no one worked harder.
My name is Dion Roberts, formerly Dion Michelle in the Twitchy Dolphin flicks. I was in Littlefield among many others, and it was such a great experience working with Jim and all the people that made this film possible. Chris, just the relationship I got to have with Jess too. I really miss a lot of you folks down in A-Town. Twitchy Dolphin, what I would say as a whole, I feel like really encapsulated late 80s, early 90s romantic comedies and kind of that genuine authenticity of, you know, John Cusack standing outside of your window with a boombox, and just kind of that young love that I think being in college at the time, it really connected me and the audience, and I think just a lot of people, because a lot of people know those feelings. And in Littlefield especially, I think we kind of touched on the graduation of relationships. And I feel like for me, a special scene would have been in the wedding dress, and just kind of starting to explore that. Because I think when you're young, you are really exploring love, and young love is different. And so it's really a journey, and I think that Jim did a great job of telling those stories.
I think my funniest anecdote was we were shooting with Derek Morris, D-Rock we called him, even though his name is spelled D-E-R. I don't know why we did that. Anyway. And it was so much hard work, but it was so much fun that the levity never left. And I'll forget, he wrapped early, went back to my apartment to sleep. And so it was just him and Jessica and my wife in the apartment. And I opened the door and he answered in his boxers like something was going on. I mean, and nothing was. But is something I just remember. The end result of the movie is very much a first film. It's very much a first film shot on DV in 4:3, because I remember at the time we weren't sure. We had read that there was an issue on the DVX sometimes converting to 16:9 and then trying to edit it, so we didn't want to ruin anything. Chris and I were always about trying new things, but at a pace that made sense, and that's going to be a theme you'll hear from the doc. But we had a great time, and the movie isn't perfect. The movie taught me a lot, but two things that really worked for that film. I think that Chris showed what a good cinematography is, and the music drove the film, and most of it, all of it, was provided by Plow Monday and by John English.
Hi, my name is John English. I wrote and recorded the song Littlefield for the movie Littlefield by Twitchy Dolphin Films. And I don't remember exactly how I ended up getting involved in the project in the first place, but I know that at some point I was told that the main character was going to be this college kid who was in love for the first time. And it took me back to how I felt my freshman year of college at the University of Texas at Austin, when I was in probably the tail end of a long-term relationship with my high school sweetheart who had also gone to UT Austin, and just the intensity of how it felt to be there together off at college and have all this freedom together, and to feel young and crazy and in love, and mostly just kind of young and crazy, and the decisions that you make and the dreams that you have and how it feels when all of that kind of comes crashing down around you. And I called the song Littlefield, not just because the movie title was Littlefield, but also because she stayed in a dorm, all-girls dorm on campus called Robert's Dorm, and there's another all-girls dorm on campus called Littlefield. And her dorm was where we spent a lot of that time together, her freshman year and my freshman year. So that's the story of the song Littlefield.
So what do I think about Littlefield and some of my favorite memories? Well, it was our first venture into really doing this movie making thing, which was really exciting. And I know for me, it was really just a matter of finding something that we were passionate about and loved to do, and truly finding a place for Jim to land after he got out of the military. So Littlefield was our first venture into that world, and it was exciting. So for me in Littlefield and what some of the memories have been, it truly was a family atmosphere. I remember one specific moment in time where one of the crew members, who I don't know how it ended up happening, but had kind of moved into our apartment and was basically sleeping in our den on a very regular basis. I mean, to be honest, as I think about it, a lot of the crew slept on our den floor and slept on our couches in our guest bedroom on a pretty regular basis. I think it was just when a shoot ended and you get at the end of the day, you're either just too tired to go home, or we might throw on a movie and people would fall asleep in place and sort of thing. But there was one in particular, and as he stayed in our apartment for longer and longer, there started to be a smell that came with that. I hate to say it, but I told Jim at some point, it's starting to smell almost like death in our apartment. This kid needs to go see a doctor. He needs to go home to his parents. One other memory I have that I want to share is just Littlefield started a tradition that lasted for several of our feature films, and that was to do our last scene and our last where we would potentially have our wrap party was going to be a beach trip. So Jim had a nice way of writing into his scripts the ending of the movie, or at least the ending where we would be shooting the end would take place at the beach. And so that was another great aspect for building that camaraderie, if you will, and building that sense of togetherness and family, because we would rent a big beach house. We would, of course, work hard during the day and do the shoot during the day, and And then at night we would have our wrap parties and wrap it up. And that was a tradition that lasted for at least, 2 or 3 movies, I think, after Littlefield. And one that we always remembered fondly, and new cast members who would come on board would often ask, like, are we going to wrap at the beach? And can always work a beach trip in, but it was always fun when we could.
And so yeah, that is Littlefield. It's a movie I don't watch very often. It's a movie I certainly don't show people very often, because at the end of the day, if you're going to make films and you're going to say your voice matters, you have an ego, and it's not perfect, but it's still going to be that first film for us that will always be something I treasure and remember very fondly.